Hello, Southwest Florida homeowners and homebuyers. Welcome to the 239 Real Estate Roundtable podcast, your go-to source for navigating the vibrant real estate landscape of our beautiful region. I'm your host, Kevin Tremmel, a local real estate agent, leader, and investor here in Southwest Florida. On this podcast, we bring you insights from best in the business, top-notch real estate professionals, seasoned agents, and experts of everything from homeowners insurance to mortgages, maintenance, and repairs. Whether you're a first-time homebuyer or a seasoned homeowner, we've got you covered with tips, strategies, and valuable insights to make your journey in Southwest Florida's real estate market a breeze. Get ready to unlock the doors to successful home ownership. This is the 239 Real Estate Roundtable podcast, where we demystify the process, share insider knowledge, and ensure you're well equipped to make informed decisions. Let's dive in.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the 239 Real Estate Roundtable podcast. On today's episode, I am joined by Angie Nichols. Angie is a Southwest Florida realtor who runs Grow Prosper MOVE. She specializes in helping people navigate the emotional and financial sides of real estate, especially during major life transitions like relocation, retirement, or downsizing. And her unique blend of real estate expertise and focusing on life transitions like that offers her buyers and sellers a more thoughtful and empowering experience. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Kevin.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And why don't we get started? Why don't you kind of tell everybody a little bit more about yourself? How long have you been in real estate? Where do you most of your business? How did you get into real estate? And just give us a little bit more info about you.
Sure, I'd love to. So I got into real estate like everybody else, thinking, oh, I want to take control of my life and get out of the corporate grind. I did that 13 years ago when my oldest son was about a year old. I worked both in my corporate job and real estate for a couple of months before deciding that real estate was where I was going to go full time. I've now been doing it 13 years. My husband has joined me in 2016, and I have a general contractor who hangs his license at my brokerage. And most recently, I've brought on 2 agents who are brand new to the industry, somebody who's done investment flips personally and VRBO management, and a retiree from corporate America who wanted to stay busy and start helping people. So it's been really fun. I differentiate my brokerage. I don't want agents. I want excellence. And we've spent a lot of time, I say, hold their hand until they can walk on their own. And I really pride myself on setting up the customer experience through excellence in training, so that you're not getting a new agent, you're getting a new agent with a seasoned broker.
Yeah, no bad habits with new agents, right? That's one of the
no bad habits. They're not stressed about finances, so they can do the right thing, do it well, and keep their training wheels on until they're ready to fly.
Yeah, awesome. And then I'd like to speak a little bit more about your brokerage name and your brand and kind of like what it stands for. So, Grow Prosper Move is clearly not just about buying and selling homes. It's not, ABC brokerage, real estate, something. So can you just kind of break down a little bit more, where Grow Prosper Move came from, what it stands for, and what that means for someone doing a transaction here in South of Florida with you?
I love that story. I would love to. So when I first started as an agent, my best friend of 25 years is in advertising and marketing. And we wanted a tagline that spoke to who I am. Although I'm incredibly friendly and warm-hearted and empathetic, I'm also very direct, get things done and do it right. So she came up with the tagline, Grow, Prosper, Move, and it just transitioned well into the brokerage name. I want to help first-time home buyers get into wealth building and equity building and secure their future. I find that a lot of what I'm doing is helping people who've already prospered expand their net worth by investing in real estate. Rentals, VRBOs are so popular down here and can really offset the cost of ownership. And then move says it all, right? We're in real estate, and if you're not moving, you're not doing real estate. So we just took the tagline I'd been using for 12 years and transitioned it into the name of the brokerage. And to what you said, it is different than ABC Realty. We are different than ABC Realty by design because we want to be. We want people to understand the powerful investment of real estate, cash flow, tax deductions, tax elimination in the right settings with proper planning. And that is a huge part of what real estate investing brings to people's bottom line and their wealth. And it's important to me that they understand it's not just buying a house, it's building your wealth.
Yeah, very, very nice. Something I'm pretty passionate about too. You know, what you just mentioned in the beginning of my career, it was a lot of first-time home buyers and kind of in the pre-COVID time. So, you know, they're all pretty happy right now as we're going through a little bit of a correction. But and then I love investing myself in real estate as well. So where do you say, like as a follow-up to that, you know, where would you say like most of your clients, are they more like on the first time home buyer side, or is it maybe kind of that first time move up buyer that's moving on from their first home, or is it the retiree that's downsizing, or is it the investor that's has 10 investment properties? How would you say like your, you know, your bread and butter, so to speak, business is kind of built?
That's a great question. And it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. What I had been really focusing on the last several years is the upper move up home buyer and seller. So that $500,000 to $1 million listing that's going to sell at $500,000 to $1 million. That's really where I shine, my expertise, the marketing component, the understanding the data, the numbers, the market, and helping people list their house to sell instead of sit. I also really love, I work with Lee Health. I get a lot of referrals from their health system for their doctors and relocating nurse staff. I'm really good. I came up through Yellow Pages. It was a phone book where you used to look up businesses. They had one of the best trainings in the country, which really helps me hear what you want, digest it, and spit it back to you and what you need to buy. So if you're here for a weekend or for a job interview, or you're a snowbird who came down and fell in love, I'm really good at honing in on what you want and steering you there to maximize your time as a buyer and get you into the house you want.
Yeah.
First time home buyers, I get a lot of those, mostly from referrals of the higher end clients I have worked with. You know, oh, would you offer the same service to my daughter that you offered to me, or son or friend? And I do love first time home buyers. They're typically the least profitable and the most time intensive, but also some of the most rewarding work because I know what I'm doing for them and their future. Even if
Yeah.
they think they're just getting a home and a place to live, I know I'm setting them up for years and decades and perhaps generations to come. And so I like to do those. I take them when I can get them. I don't spend all my money marketing to that market, but it's another area I really love. And then a niche I have, I'm a master gardener. And so I do a lot of beautifully landscaped, sustainable homesteads around the state when people are looking for those type of properties. Because I speak and train and teach in that master gardener space, I do a lot of fantastic property sales with a house attached.
Yeah, very, very cool. And I guess part of half the battle with first time home buyers is having their parents on your side. So I guess when, you know, when you get a referral for a first time home buyer from a previous client, you've already won half the battle because, you know, it made me chuckle when you said they're the least profitable, but the hardest work. And I found oftentimes it's not necessarily the actual clients that are the hard work, right? It's more like the parents with, you know, that bought a house, I don't know, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, and a lot of things have changed from 20 years ago. So, I find that be the most challenging with first-time home buyers. So it's funny. It just made me chuckle. And then another thing that really stood out to me that you mentioned is, you're in the business of helping sellers sell their home, not sit. So I feel like that's a very good segue into my next question, especially in this current state of the market that we're in south of Florida, where we're seeing, you know, the longer days on market, higher competition when it comes to supply, price reductions, things like that. What do you say, or how do you handle sellers in this market right now who feel like they're maybe more emotionally tied to their home rather than looking at the data and their pricing with their heart instead of with their data?
Yeah, it's difficult. These sellers saw their neighbors sell for, I don't care what the stats say, they were selling 20 and 25% higher in 20 to 25 minutes 4 years ago. And there had been basing their future plans on what their neighbor sold for a couple years ago. For the first time in my career, I am walking away from more listings, not because I don't want to help, but I don't want to disappoint. And I'd rather someone be disappointed in me for 30 minutes and hire another agent than be disappointed with me for 6 months to a year because I sugarcoated what was going on. So I'm
Yeah,
having real conversations. I'm showing people, hey, yes, there was one sale in this price point in the last 4 months, but there's 15 houses that haven't sold that are priced under it. And what are your goals? If you're trying to move up, this is a terrible time to be a move up buyer. I mean, you don't give up a 3% interest rate to go into a 6.5, double your insurance because most people move up into neighborhoods that happen to be flood zones. That's where
right.
desirable land is. And they are taking a bath compared to what they could have sold for, but contrary to all the negative news and the horrible Wall Street Journal report, this market is not collapsing. It was collapsing when prices were increasing 50% in 3 years. It's not sustainable. Snowbirds can't afford and don't want to afford interest and insurance when they can rent a house for 7 grand a month and be here for 21 grand a year. If that's more than their
Right.
carrying costs, they're going to sneak back and not look. So I'm working with sellers to show them the difference of what that cost looks like, what that sales price, how much more it's actually costing the buyer than it costed them. And talk to them. If now's the best time for them, great, let's do it. Let's be real. Even though the market is creeping into 7 and 8 months on the market, we have a lot of inventory, our absorption rate is low. If you price right and show well, you're still going under contract within 30 days. There are buyers. We just have to price it where the buyers are willing to pay, and that's what's going to sell houses. And it's the same that sold houses in 2021. It was just almost as hard to figure out where it was going to sell. Now we're chasing the market to the bottom to win and sell, where before it was let's not leave money on the table. How high should we go? So it's the same game, just a different endpoint.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with everything you just said. Yeah, I mean, it's really, I think, important when sellers who are listening to this and they're asking themselves, why do you want to sell? You better have a good reason if you want to sell right now, right? Job relocation, sickness, maybe a growing family, unless you can maybe thug it out, as the kids say, in your smaller home. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. And so you work with a lot of clients and people going through big life changes. I know you mentioned, relocation is nurses and executives and managers is a big thing. What's kind of a mistake that you see a lot of people make during these kind of big transitions and relocations, and how do you help your clients through that?
Oh, there's so many. There's so many. I think the biggest mistake is not knowing the area. If you're working, if you're working still, not understanding the commute and the dynamics of our traffic patterns. I think people are really being disserviced when they're not looking at what the insurance costs are. Like, yeah, you can qualify for the loan, and that's great if you're getting one, but do you want to pay that? Not giving real thought to being in a flood zone versus being a little further inland and watching your costs. Personally, take other people's advice and I give it better than my own. But we moved into a house in November 2020. Our total insurance costs were about $3,200 a year. We have now hit almost $12,000 a year in our insurance costs without filing a claim.
Wow.
So I've learned. Still better than being in the Cape. We're happy to be in Elva. I love being Gulf access. There's a lot of beauty here. But to make sure people understand those costs so that they don't buy more than they can afford. And then I think during COVID, a lot of the mistakes were just, it was such a crazy chaos. Everyone needed to get here, and buyers were a little desperate. So even in a desperate market, the fundamentals, the bottom line, paying your bills, all those things still have to matter. And making sure you understand the components of your expenses for the long term. It's the fundamentals don't change, but the
Yeah.
mistake could with the right agent.
Right, right. Yeah, good points. Yeah, and definitely feel your pain with like the insurance stuff. I'm not in that situation, but a lot of my friends and like clients are where like, they're in a flood zone now after FEMA changed the maps, even though their house never even flooded during Helene, Milton, or Ian or Irma. Like no flood damage, no claims. But when they redrew the maps, they're now in a flood zone, and all of a sudden you're going from, I don't know, 1,500 a month to 2,500 a month in your mortgage, and it's like, okay, that's weird. So I see a lot of people like kind of just relocating out farther east, like east of 75, which is good. But and
You
then
know,
last, go
to
ahead.
that point, the mistakes made specific to flood zones makes me sick to my stomach. That flood, everyone says, oh, the flood maps changed after Ian, which is true, but those had been slated to change for upwards of 10 years.
Right.
Everybody in the industry knew it was going to
New
be a new flood zone. And if you had an agent that didn't tell you that, it just
shame.
exemplifies what's going on and what the difference is between having a transaction agent and a fiduciary agent who works for your
Yeah.
best interest. And those things, they hurt people. They cause people to have to move and put them in that position. And that just drives me nuts.
Let's touch on that. I'm glad you brought that up. For some people that maybe haven't done a ton of real estate transactions, or maybe they even have, and they've always had a transaction agent. Can you kind of shed some more light on the differences between transaction and single agent fiduciary? And I know we talked about this a little bit off camera, but what do you believe in, and why would that be beneficial to one of your clients, and how is it different from other brokerages?
So, yes, I would love to talk about that. So, I call it a coach versus a referee. When you're going into a game, you want the person advising you to coach you. You don't
Mhm.
want the ref playing fair for both sides. You want someone who wants you to win, who knows how to win, and who has the expertise to get the W, right? So we choose, and I have for many years, even before I opened my own brokerage, I split out and was working as what Florida calls a single agent. We're not alone, we have a whole team, but it means we have single agency to our customer and to their fiduciary best interest. I'd say less than 5% of agents in Lee County, maybe even less than that, maybe less than 2% choose to work in that capacity. But I liken it to a coach. We want to get you to the winning line, and winning means different things. Sometimes it means just getting the house or just selling the house. Sometimes it means doing it on a timeline that wouldn't necessarily be in the other party's best interest. Sometimes it means understanding what you're doing. But the state of Florida assumes that buyers and sellers know that their agent is not working for their best interest. blows my mind because nobody knows that. Everybody
Yeah.
thinks their agent is out for them. And so we choose to be out for our customers. We choose to hold additional insurances to protect ourselves from mistakes. And what we say and what we do ultimately is looking out for the best interest of our customer based on the conversations we've had with them to understand what their best interests are. It's not always the best price on a home. Sometimes it's getting in early. Sometimes it's post occupancy. Sometimes it's a whole bunch of factors. But it's a clear distinction between getting the transaction done and getting the transaction done for the best of what you need as my client.
Yeah, great. And yeah, great explanation. And yeah, I think a lot of people get confused. And then if they're like out of state, I know some states allow dual agency, which is kind of even a little bit crazier than transaction. So it's just a whole different, ball game down here in Florida. But I want to wrap it up here at this point. I think you shared some great points and some great pointers for sellers and investors and buyers here in our market. We're of course going to link all of your contact information down below. But if someone wants to get in touch with you directly to just learn more about buying or selling or investing, where would be a good place for them to start?
So I have a pretty cool website, growprospermove.com. You can check it out. You can hit the contact us. But by far the best way is to text me and say, hey, I want to schedule a phone call. When are you available tomorrow at 2 or whatever works for you? That way I can be seated at my desk. I love doing calls like this. I often will switch to Zoom instead of a phone call. Keeps me on task and keeps my customers on task. But we can talk about whatever. If it's does investing make sense? And if so, is it Airbnb or is it duplexes or annual rentals? We can talk about that. We can talk about why is it a good time to buy when the news is terrible, or why would I sell when the news is terrible? And sometimes it just makes sense to sell. So start at the website or text me 239-281-7980. Get on my calendar and I'll walk anyone through any questions they have.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And you have a great rest of your day and stay dry in Alva.
Yeah. Good luck with that. Thank you, Kevin. It was such a pleasure.
Same here.
And that wraps up another insightful episode of the 239 Real Estate Roundtable podcast. I hope you enjoyed our discussions and gained valuable knowledge to enhance your home ownership journey here in Southwest Florida. A big thank you to our incredible guests and of course to you, our listeners, for joining us. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, or if you'd like to connect, feel free to reach out. You can find us on Instagram at Kevin Tremmel _real estate, on Facebook at Kevin Tremmel Real Estate, or visit our website, kevintremmel.com. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Your feedback is crucial and we're always eager to hear from you. Until next time, this is Kevin Tremmel, your host, signing off. See you on the next episode.